get yourself into the groove of being in a Buddhist society. So make sure you have comfortable position as much as you can, and just observe your mind through this idea of suffering. I'm sure you have suffering in your mind. So no need to go back and forth into the breath, back to the breath, back to the breath. Just allow your mind to go wherever it wants to go. I'm not going to do guided meditation too much, but just close your eyes. And wherever the mind wants to go down, allow it to go and see through suffering. There's suffering in that wherever the mind wants to go. If it goes down to the breath, yes, allow it to be there and rest on the breath. But then if it goes wandering again, you just bring the wisdom and say, this is suffering. So we'll just sit here about 10-15 minutes and observe the suffering.
For those who don't know Ajahn, let me introduce Ajahn with a short bio, because
Yeah,
I
don't
didn't
believe
do
that bio too much. I
a
think, no,
short
I'm just joking. I could introduce myself as well.
Okay.
Can I do that?
Yeah, sure.
The
Ajahn.
bio is just too boring.
Okay.
It's nice if I tell something it's more lively. Is there anything else you want to say, Eileen? So I don't take over.
All to you, all over.
Okay. So nice to meet everybody. My name is Ajahn Mudito. I come from Perth. I've been living with Ajahn Brahm there in our monastery Bodhinyana for 15 years. Been here in Singapore a few times, and I actually, yes, I'm Aussie now. I've been in Australia, really haven't stayed outside of the monastery at all. I went there. I'm from Finland, but I moved there 15 years ago, and it was 15 years ago when I went there. I literally stayed 2 nights in a hotel, and then I went to the monastery, and that's it. I haven't stayed outside of the monastery at all in Australia. So I have a passport, but I don't know anything about Australia. And yeah, so I'm from Finland. I come from really rural background. From farm. We have really grew up in it's in your standards, it would be really rural, really remote farm. I went to the school in my village, even like the whole village. We have about 200 people in the village. When I was there, there's less people there now. And my school, people always like to hear this, so I always like to repeat it. My whole school for the first 6 years, for the grade 1 to grade 6, everybody from grade 1 to grade 6 went to the same little school, and there were about 15 students in the whole school. And first 6 years, my classroom, there's only 3 of us, so 3 kids in my classroom. And the whole school, we had 2 teachers, and then we had this one lady, and she was the cook and the cleaner for the school. So we have about 3 adults in every day there. So you can imagine. So I come from really quite a remote place, and there's a lot of positive sides I realized when I've traveled in recent years, being a monk and all that. I always feel like, because I grew up like everybody's just sort of family, or where I come from, you could always go to any house, and I knew everybody, and people took care of the kids, and also I grew up when I was outside of the school, I grew up with a lot of time with grandma's farm, and so I'm used to living in the forest. So now being a forest monk, it's quite easy for me, because over there, it's my grandma's farm. Was also, we spent a lot of summers there with my brother. Basically, we just dumped there because mom and dad were busy, and so all the holidays I was with grandma, and grandma had like 2 or 3 cows, depending on when, and then a few sheep, and we have an outhouse, and only running water was how fast you can run in with the water, with the bucket from outside. So there was the running water, and so outhouse, and the only way to clean was we had a sauna, and once a week you clean yourself. You go, heat up the sauna. Finland is famous for saunas, and that's how you clean up yourself. Or we didn't have showers, things like that. So I think I have privileged childhood. Then it didn't feel like it, but I really feel these days that I'm used to having little and being content with little things, and I appreciate everybody's kindness and all that, because I grew up surrounded by kind people and family who took care of me. So I realized how important it is to take care of everybody, and so that's part of I like to be a monk these days, and I go everywhere, and I'm surrounded by kind people, and I can see the kindness wherever we go. So it's very nice. So that's my introduction of myself. So well, maybe a little bit more. I grew up in a village, and obviously you grew up somewhere remote like that. You always wish you could be somewhere bigger. So after my studies, I moved to the United States. I lived there a few years, first in San Francisco, and then I moved to New York. And I met Ajahn Brahm 2004 in New York when he came to the book. He published his first, really the big book, The Open and Door Your Heart. And I met him there on that book tour 21 years ago. I started listening to his teachings and been following Ajahn Brahm ever since, 21 years. And I remember he said one of the talks I listened to that he said it's good thing to become a monk, and I was like, wow, that's the best thing I can do. I had a good job and my life was going in a good direction, but that's like, what's the point? I mean, I can see everybody having a career and a family and all that, so maybe I should become a monk. But it still took me 5, almost 6 years after that to become a monk. But eventually, when I was 29, and I decided that, okay, it's time. So that's about really it. I mean, it's an interesting story, and people always ask us, especially, well, everywhere they ask. But I was just now in Indonesia. I just came back I was there for 2 weeks, and people are fascinated about us Westerners being monks. I mean, it's interesting for anybody to ordain, but it seemed to give them a lot of joy and happiness when I was in Indonesia teaching, that there's, even for us coming from West, so to speak, to our monks, and that we find this Buddhist teaching valuable, and we want to ordain. So it was nice to be there as well. But now I'm in Singapore, and they asked me to do some teaching, and I thought we talk about a little bit of the basic things about Buddhism. So we have the 3 characteristics of what the Buddha was teaching. And I think it's a Buddhism, we have this kind of like nice topics. Buddha was really skilled putting things under certain kind of categories, and everything is very organized in the Buddha's teachings, because they had to memorize obviously everything. They didn't have books they could just go to refer to, and when you put everything nicely, neatly into these categories, it's easy to remember, and you can see how everything starts to fit together. So even these 3 characteristics, it's a nice, just like an overall, almost like a synopsis. So it's like, okay, well, like, oh yeah, 3 things. What are the 3 things? Okay, well, anicca, dukkha, anatta. Everybody, you become a Buddhist and you start remembering these things, and quite often we remember things in Pali. So, but this, like even this with the 3 characteristics, the sequence doesn't matter. Like we always say anicca, dukkha, anatta. Now today we're starting with the dukkha, with the suffering, but and the other ones are obviously the anicca and anatta, which is Ajahn Brahm like to translate the anicca as unreliable, and as like everything is unreliable. But we go with that, I think it's tomorrow, and then we talk about on Sundays there's going to be the part of the non-self, which is, it's a beautiful teaching again of the Buddha, very, very something which you cannot find anywhere else, and really makes us Buddhists, that there's this anatta part. But today we're going to talk about the dukkha, the suffering. And it's interesting when you say to people that when you become a Buddhist, or like especially the big ones that haven't heard anything about Buddhism, and they say, they want to hear something about Buddhism, and you say this is the 4 Noble Truths, that Buddhism, the basic teaching of Buddha is that everything is suffering, and then they just sort of start like, what? Everything is suffering? Or like, what kind of teaching is that? Or what you're pretty negative, you're Buddhist. I was like, yes, we're pretty negative, but luckily there's a way out of this. So there is a silver lining to everything. But so I wanted to, so I sort of frame this like the first day today, is that, can you say that there is suffering, or should we say that everything is suffering? Because the key thing here is that what the Buddha said, the sabbe sankhara anicca and dukkha and anatta, and so sabbe sankhara dukkha, what does he mean? Like, okay, can you translate it that all sankharas or everything is suffering, or should we say whatever this cycle of rebirth or willing or choices, or however you want to translate this kind of things, that is, what's the difference between that there is suffering or everything is suffering? And it's quite a sort of like we have these little nuances, and when you really start studying and the Buddha's teaching, it really makes a difference. You look things from different angles, and you try to figure out what the Buddha was teaching. So if you look at that, that the difference there is that whether that there is suffering or everything is suffering, whether you translate that sentence there. What it really means, if you I live with these Pali scholars. I'm very lucky with Bhante Suchato and Ajahn Brahmali and all that, and obviously Ajahn Brahm is very knowledgeable as well. And you can clearly see in there that the Buddha said, no matter where you look in the cycle of rebirth, wherever you get born, everything is suffering. Not that there's like a suffering, this is suffering, but there's like everything is suffering. There is no, you cannot just say there is suffering, but because people always go like, yeah, but. Sure, there is suffering, but, right? Family is happiness, right? It's nice to have family. It's nice to be in love. Love is happiness. You can always find this kind of try to find yeah, but. It's nice to be alive. There's nothing, it's like you smile and the birds are singing, and there's what do you mean there's suffering and everything is suffering? Sure, I can see a little bit of suffering there, but it's not everything is suffering. But that's why you have to really sort of face the music, so to speak. In English we say that. You have to look at it clearly. It's no, the Buddha was saying that everything is suffering. There is no, you cannot look anywhere in this cycle and say, oh, I find this, what Ajahn Brahm calls the retirement home, that you somehow get reborn in some heavenly place and then it'll be fine. You're happy there forever after. As Buddhists, we don't believe that. There is no happiness ever after, and that sort of ties in that with that idea of anicca, that everything is impermanent. So even you get born in a happy destination, and they exist. In Buddhism, yes, we believe that they are all these different places, planes, where you can get reborn. But it's not eternal. So, and that makes that eventually suffering. So let's say we have a heavenly rebirth. You get born in Deva. Whether you believe these or not, let's just speculate that there would be such a place, that Devaloka. You get born into this heavenly realm, and it sounds like really nice place, right? Anything you wish comes to you, and there's different levels even of this Devaloka. There's more and more this blissful, happy states. Not just that you are almost like now, but everything you always wish comes through. It's like you play golf and you're the best golfer in the Devaloka. You have a mansion and I don't know what else you wish. Beautiful wife, which is all the time beautiful. A nice husband who listens all the time. And what else can you wish for? All kind of things. Win, Lord, huh? Food. Oh, that's food is important. I think Singapore is fairly close being, like Devaloka already. I can see that you're getting very close, but there's just these little things which are nagging. Coming from Finland, we just talked about it today for a long time. But we in the happiness index, Finland has been number one, not just once, 7 years in a row. Wow! And I'm here. I should be there, right? I should be in Finland. Happiest place in the world. There's nothing wrong. And then you go to Finland, you talk to people, and they were like, "I don't know how we got this title." It's difficult to understand. But the interesting thing, I did look into that research, and it's how you word. Again, the devil's in the details. When you look at that, how they word that when they do the research, it's actually measuring how much people would like to change how they are now, of what's happening at the moment. So Finland, it seems to be that we are getting high because we are quite resilient people. We content. Yeah, sure, nothing is really, we have high taxes and the weather is what it is and all these things are, same things are wrong over there as they are here, but we just sort of Finns are brought up quite resilient. It's just like, don't complain. It's always tell you, don't complain. So like, because of that, we scored high. That's the reality. No complaint. You're easily satisfied. We're quite Buddhist there in Finland. And I think that's being easily satisfied is one of the things what the Buddha was actually telling, that no matter where you look, the suffering lies everywhere. But to be this kind of, the Buddha praised that always they told us monks that when we're teaching, we should be teaching about contentment and being easily satisfied. It's interesting that there is actually that's what we should be talking about quite often, and we do. And that contentment actually, when you start looking, is like, well, how do you live with this idea of suffering? Everything is suffering. You just have to sort of accept it. And it really starts from this kind of being content, easily satisfied. No matter what happens, I can still be okay with it. Because that's the reason we really need to start looking into it. Where is this suffering? Where does it lie? And luckily I bought my cheat sheet. I have Word of the Buddha. Highly recommend it. So I don't have to remember all the things where the suffering lies, because I can just read from the book. But it is part of the Four Noble Truths. And you always have to remember what really made the Buddha. Why did he went from household life to be a just normal person? Sometimes they say he was like a noble, but it's almost like a bit too much. He wasn't like really like aristocrat what we have these days. It was quite a democratic society, or nobility wasn't really as it is now. But what made him leave that kind of easiness of being home with wife and child and go forth, so to speak, to really try to find the truth to all of this? Sure, there was that kind of questions like what's behind this? What is this world and life, and what's the meaning of life? A lot of us, it's part of the thing is like what makes quite often monks to go forth is just sort of like really there's that kind of question, and a lot of people have that. If you really look inside of you, it's like, what's the point of this? Why do I go to schools? Why do I have to listen mom all the time? Why do I have to listen dad? Why do I have to then go to school? Why do I have to earn a lot of money? Why? You can keep asking why. And that's part of the reason. And for the Buddha that before he was the Buddha, before he left home even, he started to realize there is this suffering everywhere. Surely there must be an end to this. And it was the suffering which compelled him, what like really pushed him away from this sort of easy life of having a family and people taking care of you and all that. It almost forced him out of home. It's not, that was really the key thing why he left, and he was trying to find the end to all of this. And the end to all is meaning the end to the suffering. He started to see that already then he had glimpses that no matter what happens, there's always suffering. So that it really is the driving force of this, of the Dhamma, the Buddha's teaching, really is the suffering. Otherwise, if there was some kind of retirement home, something happiness somewhere, we should be striving for that. That's what we should be teaching you. But we're not. We're trying to teach you how to get out of this loop of suffering. So let's look at a little bit what is suffering. It's funny. I was teaching this actually in Finland a few years ago, and whole morning I was teaching this the Four Noble Truths, and just on the suffering part. And then we went for lunch around 11, and the person actually invited me. He come to me and he pulled me aside. He said, "Is there anything else coming except this suffering?" And he's funny. He was the organizer. And I said, "Don't worry. After lunch, we move away from the suffering part." But today, no. We're just going to be in suffering. So unfortunately, you're going to be suffer all afternoon. Or evening today, yeah. What to do? Okay, let's cry in teary eyes, go forth with this Four Noble Truth. So the Buddha said that in the beginning that he didn't claim to be the Buddha, a fully enlightened one. He didn't call himself always the Buddha, but he, to understand all those things until these Four Noble Truths, as they really are, that he completely understood them, that he was he claimed to be the perfectly enlightened one. So the first noble truth is that there is suffering. There's this noble truth of suffering. Second one, he realized that there is this the original suffering. What's the original suffering? Craving or wanting. Yeah, well, there's this kind of underlying, sometimes they call it like almost like thirst. We want to be. We want to exist. Or wanting to exist, we want to have, we want to basically have like this five senses or sensory experiences, what you could say. That we want to exist, and then it's nice actually. Food is good. Causes you rebirth. Oh, that causes you suffering. Terrible. Stop eating. The third noble truth that wanting, stopping that wanting causes that will end this suffering, this cycle of suffering. And the fourth one is that this, he found the way. What's the way to end the suffering? Like, how do we end the wanting? And then it's quite interesting. It's like, because he realized that it was so difficult for him to find it, that he said that it's so hard to understand this. It's peaceful and sublime, unattained by mere reasoning. You cannot just think your well out of this. You cannot. It's almost like you're chasing your own tail, so to speak. You try to think your way out of your own mind. It's just you cannot do that by mere reasoning, or basically try to think your way out of this. It's very subtle and experienced by wise. But this generation delights in attachment to self, takes delight in attachment to self, and rejoices in attachment to self. It is hard for such a generation, or all the people, to see this truth. Namely, it's an empty process of cause and effect, dependent cessation, origination. Furthermore, it's hard to embrace this truth. Namely, the stilling and disappearance of will, relinquishing of everything that has been acquired, the destruction of wanting, everything fading away, cessation, nibbana. But there are beings with little dust in their eyes that are wasting through not hearing this Dhamma, these teachings. There will be those who will understand this Dhamma, and that's you. I have faith in you. You have a little dust in your eyes. No, I mean you do. That's why you hear. You really want to hear this. There's something that you realize, and when you start contemplating this Buddhist teaching, it's like, yeah, that rings true, right? And that's why, again, like people asked us monks, very common question, why did you become a monk? It's just Buddhist teachings sound right. And I will teach about this again tomorrow, but one of the first teachings I heard, it was about this anicca, that everything is impermanent, there is no reliable source in anywhere you look. And I remember the teacher that was in New York when I lived there, and I was like, wow, if this is Buddha's teachings, like I'm in. I can buy this idea of Buddhism. And it's interesting these days, quite often when we teach in Europe, people always want to hear that, please don't tell us that we have to convert to another religion. So we always try to pacify a lot of people in West. That's like, no, don't worry, we're not religion. You don't have to become another religious person if you to get into here, be a Buddhist. And Except for the tax reasons, obviously. That's the Ajahn Brahm's idea. Yes, we are religion because of the tax reasons. I'm sure it's same here in Singapore, is it? Maybe I shouldn't tell that, because somebody's going to hear this and then they're going to take away these benefits from you. Buddhist fellowship here is not going to get tax benefits anymore. It's like, oh no, Buddhism is not religion. Terrible. All right, back to suffering. I hope you're suffering. So let's see if you can agree with this, like all of these things are suffering, what the Buddha is telling us. So what is suffering? Rebirth is suffering. So Buddhism always the word is to actually the jhati. It's just really literally just, you could translate it birth, but in Buddhist context we always have to translate it what the Buddha was teaching. And he when the jhati, instead of just saying birth is suffering, rebirth, we have to translate a rebirth, because in Buddhism we believe in the rebirth, the idea of rebirth. Sure, you can take it away, but it's just like wheels stop working. Sometimes I consider this Dhamma like we have these wheels which are turning one another, and if you take even that one wheel out of this kind of cycle, or this thing which is turning the gearbox, if you think it's like, oh, just remove the rebirth and Buddhist teachings will work just fine. No, it doesn't. You cannot remove things there. But fair enough, you don't have to believe in rebirth. And one of the nice things about what the Buddha actually said, that whether there is rebirth or not, whether it exists or not, we can see the suffering here and now. That's good enough. If you see a suffering in this life, you can see that there is something like which could like reduce your suffering here and now. That's good enough. Because again, if you don't believe in rebirth, it's like, it's fair enough, because you don't see it through your own meditation. And in Buddhism, it's not just, we don't try to embrace faith, which is blind faith. For us, the saddha, the faith, should be just sort of like something we can see, and even reasoning can bring us faith. So rebirth, sometimes you can just come to it with reasoning, and that's what happened to me. I really embraced the idea of rebirth by sort of reasoning how things could work, and then reading books, and there's like listening other people's like near-death experiences, and children remember their past lives and all that. But if it doesn't, even that sounds too wishy-washy for you, fine, it's okay. But rebirth is really a big part of Buddhist teaching. But what Buddha is saying, rebirth is suffering, and that sort of implies that no matter where you get born, whether you get born in here and in Singapore, human realm, I guess, or as an animal, in a ghost realm, or like even below you go further and further, or in the higher realms you get, in a nice Devaloka, or even above that, it's like, yeah, it's suffering there. And then next part, aging is suffering. It's nice. Is it nice to be old? I don't know yet, because I'm young. No, I'm aging as well. I'm not young anymore. 46, if you want to know. Getting old. Middle-aged. What happened? I don't know where I wasted my youth. Aging is suffering, isn't it? We start seeing things falling apart, and there's like, it's like that. It's like it was so nice to be beautiful or handsome. Well, yeah, that's gone, isn't it? So we can like the aging. No matter where you look in the aging, you cannot just see aging is not suffering. Of course, it's suffering. So, getting born is suffering. Aging is suffering. Death is suffering. Sometimes death is suffering is translated as dying is suffering, because it's hard to see the death itself. But it's a bit of a tricky part. I don't want to go there too much. But death is not a moment. In Buddhism, we don't believe. Well, okay, I shouldn't make this massive statement. Buddhism, we don't believe. I don't know what people believe. Other teachers teach different things. I believe almost this. Let's put it this way: that death is not a moment. It's not like you're alive and then you're dead. It's not like there's this clear-cut one mind moment. It's like it's a process. The same way you are a process. And that's what really ties into this idea that there's no self. But again, we will come there on Sunday, hopefully, if we survive until then. But everything is like a process. You are you now, and you are now again you, and you are again now you. Every second, every millisecond, but like you can see that you are exactly the same every second, except you're not. Something, your mind is changing all the time, actually. But the same way you have to start taking it in a bigger picture that, okay, well, every second it's me. Well, every minute it's me. 1 hour later, you are you. Tomorrow, when you wake up, you're going to be you. There's not like different you waking up. It's you waking up. And the same like you were a minute ago, you were you. Yesterday, a month ago. All this life, so you can see that there's almost like this path going. It's like you see these paths going, and the further you look, and as like it gets more and more muddy, it's like sort of like you don't really see the path clearly, but you can see that there's well-trodden path just within this week, and you can see that I always walk this same path. But the further you look into the path, it's hard to see that you walked it almost, and the further you look, the further the path goes. Like, I don't know which way I came here, but you seem to always be walking the same path. And again, that path leads you, tomorrow. But it's hard to see further and further. But in that, it's this kind of, you have to think about this kind of process, that it's sort of this well-worn path, and it just keeps going from life to life. It sounds magical, but it's just you going. I'm already describing the Sunday's teaching. But death or dying is really process. So the dying, again, is process. The dying is process, but the dying part is really what the Buddha was talking about. The death itself, it's a process, but that it ties in with that suffering part. That is really, there's a lot of suffering. It's a lot of not just bodily suffering, but mental suffering, immense mental suffering. And it's interesting to see, even the suttas, some of the monks were really close to being, they were already like what we call the Aryans, noble ones. And they got worried when they were dying. They were like, they had mental anguish. They were like, what's going to happen to me? So even they had suffering. The Buddha himself said that when people like, oh, please don't die. And he was saying like, look, my body's just, it feels like it's just holding together by mere like old leather straps, like an old cart, which is pulled to being held together by leather straps. And he said like, I cannot keep going. I have to, this body just cannot keep going anymore. All of that is the suffering. The body just wears out, no matter what, no matter how much Botox you put. Eat the best Singapore food, healthiest thing, it will fall apart. Even for those, I guess, those people who are trying to not die these days. But so death is suffering. And then they go into the mental suffering. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, unhappiness, distress are suffering. Experiencing what is unpleasant is suffering. Easy to understand. Missing what is pleasing is suffering. It's interesting. So we even like, okay, well, that's why the Buddha was so, he tried to find every loophole, because everybody's going to go in the future. He knew this. It's like, but everybody always wants to, I find it. This is not suffering. So Buddha, everywhere he gave us these kind of synonyms, he explained it very clearly. You can't find loopholes in the Buddha's teaching. So missing what is pleasing is suffering. Not getting what one wants is suffering. So everywhere you look, what the Buddha said, 5 components of existence, what we are made out of. This body is suffering, but also your mind is suffering. And then the Buddha goes into explain what is rebirth, what is aging, what is death, what is sorrow, lamentation, pain, unhappiness, distress, what is experiencing, what is unpleasant, missing, what is pleasing. And it's again, the Buddha explained everything, and that's why it's nice to have this kind of simple books like the Word of the Buddha. You can really, it's compiled really nicely together. As Ajahn Brahm has put a lot of effort into translating it, everything really nicely. And so you can go into this kind of like short booklets and find these basic teachings of Buddha. But I wanted to go a little bit into what we call about two arrows. The Buddha thought about two arrows. So we have the suffering of body and suffering of mind. And I have suffering now because I wish we had a table here, but I have to hold my laptop on my lap, so I'll do that. Suffering exists, so what to do? Do we have less suffering? Wow. Maybe there isn't suffering. Maybe Buddha was wrong. Wow. Look at you. Yeah, good. No more suffering. My life is... But I have pain in my ankle. I don't know. I have to teach you. What would I do if I don't know. It's like there's less suffering when I sleep, I guess, for a little while. But even in sleep, this is an interesting thing. We know with sleeping, people, especially when you're depressed, you just want to sleep. You want to sort of disappear in that sleep world. But even there, you exist, right? And I like to, I wonder if this is in the suttas, actually. I should look into it. But when you sleep, we have this sense of self, right? Even when you sleep, it's you who's sleeping. Even when you have the weirdest dreams, it's you who sees the weird dreams. It's not like you are somehow another person when you sleep. It doesn't work that way. There's this kind of like level which is reduced when you sleep, but it's you who's still there. And so even the suffering exists even on the sleep state. So I don't know, if I was in my room lying down in this cozy bed they give me here and I'm sleeping, I'm still suffering. So I might as well be here with you. Suffer with you. Okay. So we have this, it's a very famous sutta. The title is An Arrow. And the Buddha was teaching that about pleasant, painful, and neutral feelings. So we have these Vedanas in Buddhism, like what the mind is made out of. We have, for example, will. So we have mind is made out of will or choices. You think we have and again, I don't want to go too deep in there because it's Sunday's teachings. But part of what the mind is made out of is your will, volition, or choices, like some translators translate. We think we have free will, but you don't. There is no self there per se. So this suffering exists, but it's not really you suffering. You just identify yourself with it. And that's where the identification, that's where the suffering really comes from. Because you identify the suffering with you. So again, all of these things, like I said, sometimes I feel like it's like gears, and the one gear is turning the another, and we cannot just take one concept out and think it's going to somehow work. If we take this idea of non-self out of it, this anatta, and then there's like the suffering doesn't work somehow if there is self there, and it's like it's just fascinating to me to look at it sometimes and see how the gears are working. But anyway, so Buddha was talking about that we have these feelings, or Ajahn Brahms actually, he translated as experience. So we experience the world three different ways. Feeling is difficult because the translation feeling, because like I feel sad or I feel happy. That's not what the Buddha was talking about. Vedana, Ajahn Brahms like to translate it as an experience because you experience the world three different ways. There's only three ways you can experience. You have three Vedanas. We have Dukkha, Sukha, Adukkha, Sukha. And so we have three different kind of feelings or experiences. Suffering, we can experience, always, anything you look in the world, you can see that it's suffering. Or happiness, Sukha. And the third one is Dukkha Sukha. Ajahn Isarna translated as a neutral feeling. I think as good as any. It's hard to sort of like, you don't really know where it is. You don't have mindfulness, it's not strong enough, or it's hard to categorize. But that's what the Buddha said. We have three different kinds of experiences. You hear me, then it's in your mind and you experience it, and then it's followed by something, which is this experience. You experience me saying something as suffering or happiness or neutral, and then you look at me, then you see the seeing is neutral or maybe pleasant for a while. And so mind is made out of different things, and then all of those experiences, what you experience when it comes into your mind, the mind automatically finds it either happiness, suffering, or quite neutral. So we categorize those things. So in the beginning of the sutta, the Buddha was saying that even if everybody, he talks about unlearned, ordinary person, everybody feels that pleasant, painful, and neutral feelings. Everybody has those. You're human, deva, ghost, wherever, animal, we feel those things. But he says, but even the ones who are noble ones, they learned what he called here, Arya Savako, the Aryans, the learned wise ones, even they experience the same way. They experience, feels the pleasant, painful, and neutral feelings. And then he says, well, what's the difference between somebody who's on the path, so to speak, who's what we call the learned or the noble ones, or one on the path to become enlightened, whatever you want to call them. Well, what's the difference between an ordinary person and somebody who's getting out of this cycle of rebirth? It's an interesting question. He said, when somebody who's an unlearned, ordinary person experiences painful physical feelings, they sorrow and wail and lament, beating their breast and falling into confusion. They experience when they experience these feelings, and it is exactly right. So, well, let me explain. Let me just give the simile first. It's like a person who is stuck with an arrow, only to be struck with the second arrow. That person experiences the feeling of two arrows. In the same way, when an unlearned, ordinary person experiences painful physical feelings, they sorrow, wail, and lament, beating their breast and falling into confusion. They experience two feelings, physical and mental. So that's the key thing here, with like you have sickness in your body. It's not just the sickness in your body, it's always followed by the second arrow. Oh, what's going to happen? Will it get worse? I'm sick. Why am I sick? All kind of things. And it's not just even for you. Your loved ones or our loved ones. It's the same for me. It's not like outside of this. The thing is that when somebody you care about, they're sick, and it's like, well, I wish they weren't sick. So we always have this deeply rooted things like, I wish this sickness would go away. I wish this pain will end. And then we also, think in the future that, oh, this is going to get worse, or it's never going to end, and this is the end. And we think in the past, well, I shouldn't have eaten that much salt, and now I have high blood pressure. Terrible. So there's always that's the second error. So you experience two feelings, physical and mental, from that bodily painful feeling, sickness. When they're touched by painful feeling, they resist it. The underlying tendency for repulsion towards painful feeling underlies. When touched by painful feeling, they look forward. When touched by painful feeling, they look forward to enjoying sensual pleasures. Why is that? Because an unlearned, ordinary person doesn't understand and escape from painful feelings apart from sensual pleasures. And that's true as well, isn't it? When we have pain, we just sort of start fantasizing even, okay, well, this will end, or like, I'll take the painkillers and it will end, and you think your way out of that painful feeling. So you just like, there's this worry, and then at the same time, we wish it wasn't there, and we think our way out of it, so to speak. So we always have like hopes and dreams. The Buddha was dashing all of those terrible. There's no hopes and dreams here. Anyway, so what to do? They do, and because of that, and that's the reason what the Buddha was saying is, it's so hard to teach these things. It's really hard to tell us, we are now following his footsteps. This is the path. People don't want to hear this. Nobody wants to hear this, that this is what we're all doing. Because an unlearned person doesn't understand any escape from painful feelings apart from sensual pleasures. We are so deeply rooted in this world of 5 senses here. We don't know anything else. We don't understand that the escape. But the Buddha was teaching us the escape, but it's really difficult to understand. These subtleties, what the Buddha was teaching. Since they look forward to enjoying sensual pleasures, the underlying tendencies to greed for pleasant feeling underlies that. They don't understand the feeling's origin, disappearance, gratification, drawback, and escape. The underlying tendency to ignorance about neutral feeling underlies that. If they feel pleasant feeling, they feel attached. If they feel painful feeling, they feel it attached. If they feel neutral feeling, they feel it attached. They're called an unlearned, ordinary person who is attached to rebirth, old age, death, to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress, who is attached to suffering. We are actually attached to suffering. That's again, it's so weird to understand these teachings. You make the attachment. You know why you have attachment to the suffering? Because it's you who's suffering. The self is there. We need to. That's the root of all these sufferings. Not the first arrow, the arrow of sickness, but it's me. I'm suffering. So you make it into something. You make it into a self. And instead of like, no, we cannot end suffering. Body will get sick. Can you stop body being sick? No, there's no way. Can you stop your mind to be mind have suffering? No. Everything is suffering. You cannot escape it. That's the whole point of it. It will always be there as long as you're there. That's the underlying cause there. So what we're trying to do is not to get some kind of rebirth which gets us out of this time, like this kind of happiness ever after. You cannot have that. The suffering is everywhere we go. So the self has to disappear. The Nibbana has to exist in this process somewhere in order to suffering to cease completely. Only then the suffering will cease, because you come to an end. We won't erase suffering. Even the Buddha has suffering, and then it's later here in the suttas, and maybe I go a little bit there, that the Buddha experienced suffering the same way physically. But when the disappearance happened, Nibbana, that's when the suffering came to an end. Completely. That's the only way to end suffering. There's not like, oh, I eat perfect food, I have the perfect loved ones, oh, maybe I get born in the heavenly realm and that happily ever after. It doesn't work that way. You are still there. Okay, where are we? Okay, and then we talk about the learned noble disciple. So if somebody who really understands how things are. By the way, we're going to take a little break soonish, so don't lament sorrow too much. And anyways, we don't have that much time left, but I know usually in the teachings we always just keep gunning it, and then you're just like, so tired, there's so much suffering. But let's take a little break soon. But I just read this sutta to an end, and then we meditate, and you can stretch and use the toilet, and then we continue a little bit longer. But don't worry, we're getting close to having a little break. But what is a learned person? When they experience a painful physical feelings, they don't sorrow or wail or lament, beating the breast and falling into confusion. They experience one feeling, physical, not the mental. So everybody who's on the path, even the Buddha, would have back pain. He had problem with his leg when there was a rock fell on it. And at the end, he was getting old like everybody else. But they experience only physical, not the mental suffering. It's like a person who is struck with an arrow, but was not struck with the second arrow. That person would experience the feeling of one arrow, and again, the feeling, the word there is Vedana. So you could say experience. That person would experience or feel one arrow. In the same way, when a learned noble disciple experiences painful physical feelings, they don't sorrow or wail or lament, beating the breast and falling into confusion. They experience one feeling, physical, not mental. When they're touched by painful feeling, they don't resist it. There's no underlying tendency for repulsion towards painful feeling underlying that. When touched by painful feeling, they don't look forward to enjoy sensual pleasures. I feel really sick now, but I hope I can eat really good food tomorrow. Why is that? Because a learned noble disciple understands and escape from painful feelings apart from sensual pleasures. And they don't look forward to enjoying sensual pleasures. And so because of that, there's no underlying tendency to greed for pleasant feeling underlying that. They truly understand feelings, where they come from, how they end, what's the gratification and what's the drawback, and how we escape that. So without going much further with that, I think that's enough from that sutta. But you can clearly see from this sutta, or try to sort of get a glimpse of it, that really what the Buddha was saying, that yes, we all have this painful feeling, or suffering rather. Not just, it's an arrow, like he really talks about painful feeling in the body, but so you all have those things, painful feelings in the body. We're born now, we're here, we have it. Humans, we get sick, we get old, and we die, and that just follows from that getting born here. There's no escape from it now. You are already born. The next rebirth, we'll try to end that so we don't get born again, and that ends that suffering. You cannot end the physical suffering here. But the second part of it, even if you get further in the path, you start seeing that suffering exists. I don't have to mentally suffer too much even getting old. I don't have to mentally suffer so much about not being so beautiful anymore getting old. It's just you start understanding the drawbacks of like attaching yourself into this kind of being what I used to be, or not having health problems. Like you don't make so much self out of that. Suffering is like sickness, but it's not. I don't have to make really massive self out of it. And then when the sicknesses come, they will come to us. We sort of like make it softer, and then because of that, again, that makes it into your karma. So like you continue with this path. All of these things we slowly get further and further. But let's take a little break, because I can see that you're widgeting there a little bit. So we continue at 9 o'clock. So we have a nice little 10-minute break. So take a little break. You can sit there or stretch or use the toilet and suffer a little bit less, but then we continue. Okay, if you're more or less ready, we continue a little bit further. So I read a quote from or a little verse from the Dhammapada. The short verse is it's almost like poetry from the suttas. The Buddha says, all conditions are suffering. When this is seen with wisdom, one grows disillusioned with suffering. This is the path to purity. So it's quite an interesting thing, and I'll just quickly talk about a little bit of that. So, sabbe sankhara dukkha, that's what the Buddha is saying, and when the Suchados translated, all conditions are suffering. So the sankharas, the conditions, so wherever you are born. The sankhara is quite a difficult term, but really, whatever condition you are in, whether it's mental or physical suffering, wherever you get born, all you willing, what you choose, you think you're going to choose, which is not suffering, but you are actually always choosing suffering. Even if you, tendency, like we obviously naturally we always try to choose things all the time. We're making choices all the time, and we are just trying to choose things which are off the suffering. It's less suffering. It's just what we're doing all the time. We don't realize that. But this sankharas, what we are choosing, we are still choosing suffering. There's no way out of that. Yes, the mental suffering we're trying to reduce. Slowly, you're getting further and further in the path. But the physical suffering follows. But most of the time, you actually don't see your choosings, your willing, that it is you're choosing suffering. When this is seen with wisdom, one grows disillusioned with suffering. This is the path to purity. And the interesting that once you see the suffering, that no matter what you do, no matter how you try to choose, you see it with actual wisdom. The wisdom starts arising. And Buddhism, you always have to remember, wisdom is not something you learn from the books. You try to, like I talked about earlier, that you can somehow think your way out of here. We need to feel our way out of here. You start feeling, it's suffering. It's not like you think yourself out of this samsara. There is no, you kind of mere reason your way out of it. You start feeling the suffering. You understand it that way. Compassion starts growing in you. You see the suffering, and because of that, you have a compassion for others, and that reduces your mental suffering. Somebody tells you something bad, and you just see that, oh, that's the conditioning. So you start rounding up these massive sufferings we have. So the nibbindati, disillusioned, it's the same word as like disillusionment, you get disillusioned, but it's the same, it's very close of this kind of like you are going towards the nibbana, ending of all of this. You see, it's like, I can't find happiness, but also that I've been actually attaching myself, the self is attaching itself to suffering. This is the path to purity. The maggo is obviously the path, and there's like the Eightfold Path, and the purity is interesting again. Like you're going further and further away of purifying yourself into lesser and lesser suffering. So there is suffering, but there is a way out of this suffering, and that's what the Buddha was trying to teach us. There is two arrows, mental and physical arrow. We cannot avoid it. The physical, mental, we start making less and less by having good thoughts, kindness, speaking nice words, taking care of ourselves, having loving kindness towards ourselves, meditating, start seeing the suffering, compassion starts growing. Everything always works with this, like the gears start turning. And everything really starts from seeing teachers, hearing the Dhamma, trying to reflect it, put it in a good use. And then, that's where everything starts. It starts by seeing seeing the noble ones, or we could just say seeing the teachers and hearing it. You don't really have to read yourself out of this or reason. You just have to have the encouragement from others, and the ball starts rolling. So that's a nice thing about also in Buddhism, that really it starts from this kind of like, obviously the Buddha was the first one of the teachers, and then the teachers follow from there, and we just keep it alive, and we just sort of not will ourselves out of it. You cannot just sort of rip yourself out of this samsara, this cycle of rebirth. You just sort of start, nibbindati actually is the same. Sometimes I feel like that's kind of, you start turning away. The turning away starts happening slowly. You start seeing like, oh, like I've been doing that, but I don't like it anymore so much. So that you start turning away from things. It's very natural, and the further you spend with this, with the good teachers and good people, and you're hearing the Dhamma and you're reflected, and the compassion and all that, slowly you just, the turning away starts happening. You cannot help it. So again, it's like, don't think that overnight you change. It's just the change happens slowly. And what are you turning to? You're turning actually towards wisdom and happiness. You suffer less, and that's why the turning starts happening, because you're seeing like, I'm not suffering so much anymore. So that's a nice thing. Well, like, why is this path towards happiness? Because everything is suffering. You start seeing the suffering with different lenses, so to speak. The self is disappearing. That is the key here. The suffering is there, but the self is not attaching itself into that so much. So, if we think about happiness for a while, where do you find happiness? What really is happiness for you? We talked about food, right? Food is happiness, definitely for Singaporeans. Important thing. Food is happiness. Suffering. Food is happiness. How do you make the food into like you? How do you clearly see it that it's just what it is? Like, what's wisdom with food? Because is there happiness or suffering in the food? Well, what's the suffering part with food? Huh? Too much? You ate too much? Yeah, that was me today. Yeah, I know. Eating too much is suffering. Yeah, sure. But one thing I always like, more and more these days, I started like, oh, I had too much salt. Well, yeah, what's that going to lead into, right? Oh, salt. Yeah, I should reduce my salt intake. It's your fault, actually. I'm eating too much salt because you feed me. Well, that's a blood pressure, right? Eating too. Then you get this blood pressure. Well, like, okay, not good. Oh, I shouldn't be eating fat because then you're like, oh, like, well, then reduces the, some other things, and then you have to take medication for that. So you have to eat this, like, so that's the suffering with food, right? It's like, that's one part of the suffering. Oh, you eat something nice, but he was like, oh, it could be a little bit nicer than this. The garnish wasn't so beautiful. Like, I was like, I'm paying too much for this. I could have got it cheaper somewhere else. My mom used to make it better. Everything. You're looking at wrong, right? You're not looking with gratitude. What you can do is just start changing your attitude towards. Be a little bit more easily satisfied, content. Look at, like, you live in a Devaloka here in Singapore. You have plenty of food. Most of you can afford to eat good food. So you look at it differently. You look at the food with gratitude. You look at it, this is the health and health for my body. I'm eating what I need to eat. You don't need to eat things which you don't like because it somehow makes your body healthier and healthier. Try to enjoy what you're eating. So you reduce the suffering because you made this huge self out of that eating, that the healthiest food possible. So you eat what your body needs. So it's with wisdom. You see the food what it is. It gives your body needs food. So we eat what it wants, but the body needs, but not overeating, like you said. Sure, you always have to have the dessert at the end. Even like no matter how full you are, you can fit that little bit of ice cream in there, but try to avoid overeating too much all the time. So it's like you eat enough, but not overeating all the time. You eat what the body needs, not what everybody else telling you should be eating. You eat with gratitude, not by seeing how you should have something else or something better. There's all these subtle things. And the more you look at the food with that kind of gratitude and, what it can give you, see, you're turning away from suffering, right? It's interesting that we're just changing our attitude. Look, I just give an example. I used to be a chef. And in this, fancy restaurant, yeah. All these people, who work in these really high-end restaurants, they hate food. They absolutely hate food. It's not like they enjoy food. All the time you see mistakes. So then I became a monk, and I look at the food and I was like, wow, look at that. What kind of garnish is that? They didn't put enough salt. The spices are all wrong. I was looking at it wrong, right? People come to monastery and they give bring food to the monastery. And my attitude was looking at it as if I'm a chef. I see mistakes. So I had to change my attitude. I changed my attitude of seeing it with gratitude. It's mothers who are cooking. It's not like this, top chef somehow, magically bringing all these top food into the monastery. It's somebody who cares about the monastics. So I look at the food with gratitude. I look at the food that is bringing me happiness. It keeps my body healthy. That's why I changed my attitude towards food. So these days, I much prefer that you make nice food with loving kindness and bring it to the monastery than you take me to the best restaurant. For me, it's a lot better. I really don't like to go in fancy restaurants anymore and somehow think that it's enjoy the food. The enjoyment is not there. The enjoyment is in your happiness, the loving kindness. So you change your attitude, and then you're going towards happiness. The suffering is this kind of trying to find the exact best food in Singapore and not pay anything for it. That's still suffering, because then you still think it's it was okay. What kind of happiness, what other happinesses you have in life? You enjoy family, perhaps? Family is happiness, right? There's certain happiness is family. Some families are happy, some families are not happy. It's nice to have companionship, who you can share things, and there's this kind of we in this together, right? But there's all the time this kind of nagging feeling that this will end. So there's always, no matter where you look into it, it's even the nice companionship, and it's you're sharing things and all that. There's this, it's this will come to an end, and I wish it wouldn't. And there's actually things like that is in the suttas where these people went to, this husband and wife, they've been married for a long time. They went to the Buddha and said, how can we continue this? We don't know anything else. We've always been together. And the Buddha said, if you share the same spiritual values, you're always going in the same. Or did he say that? Yes. You share the same spiritual values, going in the same direction, or you will find each other. And the spiritual values are gratitude, and it's generosity and other things listening. So if you share those values, you are sort of going, the path becomes the same. You are finding yourself together. So there are certain kind of happiness, but we have to start seeing that there's the underlying suffering follows with it. And we slowly will start turning away. It's just sort of I can see what it can give me, but I can see the drawbacks. Slowly you start turning away. And it's interesting for me to living in the forest all the time and then coming into the city once in a while, whether it's Perth or here or any other place. More and more you see everybody's you're on your phone all the time with your smartphone, and you have your headphones all the time as well, these the earbuds. And I was thinking, why is everybody wearing those? So what does it give you? What kind of happiness does it give you to have those earpods all the time? You're listening. I don't know what you're listening. I don't have those. So I assume you're listening a lot of music or podcast or probably not so much Dhamma. I wish you would, but you don't. I'm sure it's music, but what kind of happiness does it give you, having those things all the time on? Yeah, but what is that entertainment? Sure, you're entertained by the music, but I feel sometimes, because I don't listen to music that much, but once in a while I get it, you know, like I hear it somewhere, and once in a while I see it on YouTube or something. It's almost like it stops my thinking mind. For a while I don't have to think, right? That's why it feels to me. I was listening to this one. It really hit me. I was listening to this one podcast. I once in a while I like to listen to them, and then they were talking about this one music, how it's like a meditative. It's like this very loopy music, and I was like, oh, it's interesting. Oh, it's like meditative. It's not meditation, but they would describe it as. So I was like, okay, I'll keep listening to it, and then you went into the music, and it was really, there was this kind of like a rhythm, like meditative rhythm. There was like this lady was composing music, was this kind of very loopy music, and I was like, I was just listening to it, and all of a sudden I realized that my discursive thoughts had stopped in my mind, and there was this kind of very pleasant. I wasn't there for a while, and I'm sure yes, it's entertaining, but why is it happiness? Because you are not there for a while. You distract yourself from you. Why? I don't know what you watch on TV. Maybe Chinese drama would be here. Is that good? MasterChef? Chinese drama, MasterChef. I'm hitting all the right notes. What else you could watch? Anyways, I'm sure it's like you like to do that because it distracts yourself from you. For a while, you don't exist. And then the suffering had ceased for a while. But you always pick it up again. So it always comes back. So start noticing those things. Like, I just put these things on, the AirPods, and I'm start listening music, and you're walking on the street. I'm not suffering because of this. It's sort of like you reduce the sense of self a little bit. But always remember that you cannot distract yourself out of the samsara, out of this cycle rebirth. So just sort of have that kind of little bit of wisdom. This doesn't end it all. As a Buddhist, I should be trying to end this suffering. This suffering is reduced now because I'm just listening to my favorite music, and it's like quite groovy, and I'm just walking around, and belly is full, and Singapore weather is nice, and 22.5 degrees everywhere you go. No, but indoors. Apparently 22.5 degrees is the optimal temperature. This is what we enjoy in Singapore. So yes, it's nice, and you are groovy, and life is good, but this won't end the suffering. The end of the suffering is there what the Buddha was teaching, the Eightfold Path. That's where you end the suffering. So always remember, I will also always pick this up. I cannot end the suffering like this. Suffering will follow no matter what. I need to go to hear the Dhamma. I need to see the monks and nuns. I need to go to the Buddhist Fellowship. That's what ends the Dhamma. Even though it's like suffering to sit there, to meditate, and listening to these teachings, I don't understand them, and it's too much dukkha. But this is the way to end the suffering, not the headphones all the time, or the food, or the family, all of those things, but they support you, but they don't take you all the way to the end. But do you have any questions you'd like to ask about suffering? Happinesses? We have about 10 more minutes, and if there's anything, it would be nice if you have any questions. It's usually when somebody starts, somebody has to be brave to ask the first question, and then we can never stop.
No questions? Too much suffering.
Too much suffering now.
Any from there behind?
Yeah, I know. It's a bit difficult sometimes with the mind is blank. But how do I get you started? With the happiness and suffering, has anybody found peace? Could anybody tell me about something in the meditation which has brought you this kind of peace? What does it feel like? Anybody has a nice experience to tell me about? What does it feel like when it's like this? Something has stopped. Where is happiness in meditation? Does anybody has a nice kind of simile? Anybody gone into meditation retreat and just experience pain for all the time? Nobody has anything good to say about meditation? How do you meditate if you just experience dukkha all the time? Is it dukkha, 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 dukkha? Or is this like suffering, 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 and then there's like, now I see where the happiness lies? Eiling?
Peace, peace.
What is peace? How does it feel like?
Yes, Yi-kun wants to share.
Oh, you want to share? That's good, thanks.
Hi Ajahn, thanks for your teaching. Sorry, I'm hiding here trying to manage the equipment.
Yeah.
Just to share a bit of my own experience, I started meditation because of depression, and I got out of it I got out of depression through meditation. So, in response to your question, I guess for me, it's I started with very very strong negative Vedana and very strong negative Sankhara. Then it slowly faded over like maybe 3 years. Yeah.
So how does it feel in meditation? Well, or is it sort of gradually you start seeing in the daily life, or did it happen whilst meditation, or like it's just sort of like did it feel like in the daily life like I feel it could come but it's not coming to me? Like how do you experience that?
So it starts as what you feel in daily life will also pour into a meditation, so vice versa, right? So it starts as, I feel very negative all the time in life. Then when you go to meditation, once you sit, after a while it just strikes you. All the negative feelings and thoughts just strikes you. But after a while, when I look at it over time, as I see more and more, distance between myself and my feelings and my thoughts, then slowly in daily life I can see my aggregates more objectively.
Yeah. So it's like, sometimes I feel that it's sort of like these things which always used to follow me, that is like I'm sometimes afraid it still will come, or still, so there's this worry that it will somehow find me, and you feel lucky, so far so good, but it could come. So there's interesting how like all these things come, like there's this kind of relief that like, it's like, it's so nice I'm not there, and this kind of dark cloud of depression or whatever is following you everywhere you go. And it's true that I'm sure we all recognize that's one of those releases what comes from like meditation and hearing the Dhamma, and it's like it's hard to say like how effects, isn't it? You kind of just like, this is the effect, but you can see the effect, but it's not because of this. And it's hard to sort of pinpoint it. But it is interesting that when you're outside of it, you realize that how much suffering there was. And it's but it's, when you're out, but once you're in it, you cannot see how you could ever get out of it. And that's why it's nice to, like, I always try to encourage you, just keep coming, keep coming. It's like, even if you don't see, like, it's not working. But eventually, some point, you just realize, why I haven't been obsessed about this, whatever was following you everywhere you go, for a month. And then when you're out of it, you can clearly see how much you were suffering. So then meditation, that's what it should give us. It gives us this kind of, not instant release somehow, magically you get out of it, but it's a gradual path, and slowly you start getting it. So it's nice to, see that. Thanks.
But I guess I have a question, right? So related to this, so at the start of my journey, I I have attachments towards those negative feelings, those negative thoughts, because it felt very familiar to me.
Right.
But I moved on to the phase where it's maybe I describe it as nibbida. So like what you like describe, like, oh, I got disenchanted with whatever I was familiar with. So my question is, how do people, like lay people, see, like say the pointlessness in like food or like whatever cravings they have?
How do you see? Yeah, okay, well, going into that, the beginning is what you were just saying is like, yes, people are depressed about being depressed. You're anxious about being anxious. You're, sad about being sad. So it's like, we need to sort of stop that as well. It becomes an identity. It's like you're so sad and you keep crying, and then because you cried, you're just sort of like, oh, I'm such a sad person. And it's like you well in this kind of like, you roll into sadness. And one of the Thai teachers said, it's like, it's okay to cry, but then when you cry, just stop. You don't need to be sad about being sad. You don't need to make a person out of this. I think, it sort of ties into that food thingy a little bit, that you don't need to sort of like make more self out of that. It's like you enjoyed food, and it's like, oh, I have to stop enjoying food. I'm not teaching that. I'm trying to teach is like you start seeing it with wisdom. Like food gives me this, it gives me happiness. And I want to eat these things. I enjoy it, and and that seems to be good to me. But don't eat. Make yourself sick, or like you're depressed and you keep eating and eating and eating because you want to eat, and that sort of somehow by eating. Let's say you're sad, and you always just keep eating ice cream, like some ladies tell us. Sometimes you hear these stories like, I'm sad, so I just always go for the ice cream. You're sad eating, something like that they call it. But so you see it with wisdom. Like, yes, I need to enjoy food. So again, people get attached to, like, I should be eating these foods. But maybe that's not the best food for your body. Maybe your body needs something different. But everybody always tells you, that's the healthy food. It's like, oh, everybody needs to eat avocados. Yeah, but my stomach cannot take avocados. Yes, but it's healthy for me, so therefore I should be eating avocados. But it really is like that. We get brainwashed into this thing, and we don't really see this like, well, I'm a Singaporean, I need to eat these foods to keep healthy, and this brings it. I don't overeat. I eat enough, and it's not my whole life. You don't become obsessed about food, but it's like, so it supports your body. So you see it with wisdom. So it's different, and you see it with gratitude. I was like, I'm lucky. I can eat good food instead of trying to fault find. Oh, the chef didn't do it just perfectly. It's like, there's no perfect food. You cannot find it. So yeah, the wisdom starts growing is you're content with the little and the food what is given, and then all those things. And you appreciate mom for cooking the food. Even my mom, she's not the best cook, but appreciate it. She's trying her best. So I go home and I said, yeah, Mom, thank you for cooking. It was so nice to be back home. Like, just shovel it in, it keeps yeah. No, she's okay, yeah. Any other comments or questions? That's good, yeah, it's good. That's when you start, then there's a few questions come. Here.
Hello, Ajahn. Thank you for teaching. I just want to make my observation.
It is, I can hear you clearly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, oh, that's
okay.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just want to make my observation to share. When you started to give us about 10 minutes meditation to observe suffering, so when you teach later about feeling two arrows at one after another, so I could relate back when I was meditating and I felt physical pain. Immediately I trying to ease my pain, the thought of relieving it by moving it or shaking it a little bit. So that actually I can relate to what you have taught about two arrows. So first physical pain, and followed by the next is the mental pain, that trying to relieve out of this pain. And yeah, that's really helpful.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a nice that you observe that. And one thing I always really emphasize, if you come to my meditation retreats or even day meditation or 1 hour, we're not here to suffer. Don't put yourself through a lot of suffering and think that I endured a lot and therefore I did something. That's the meditation. Stop that. Don't do that. Sit comfortably. Then you allow the body to disappear, fade away. But what you're observing, that is exactly right, that you get into this kind of like, I shouldn't be moving, this pain, and you look at the pain, and then you start getting into this, like, nobody else is moving, this is, like, I shouldn't be moving. Then you start getting that suffering, and then you start like, well, I can't take it, well, I'm going to move, and then you move really with anger. So you have this anger movement. So again, it's like I like to teach is like, okay, you will have that. You're sitting there, and no matter how comfortable you are, after a while you might get pain. Just look at it. It's like, yeah, that's body, and then just move. Otherwise, it's getting like, I can't be moving, and then you move really with anger, and then there's still pain. I'm gonna move again. I was like with anger, and then everybody's hearing me moving. I'm really more angry now that nobody else is moving, and I'm the only one moving. You're creating more and more frustration. So I'm like always saying, it's like, oh, please, you're allowed to move. And it's like, look at the, pain, and then just develop, this kind of like compassion in your body. I need to move now, but do it, slowly and with kindly. And then you have then you observe again, is there more pain? And that's what we're trying to get out of it. Because the point of meditation or sitting is that you allow the body to fade away. If something is static, it's not moving, like the traffic outside, or the aircon in this room, it's static, it's not moving. When you pay attention to something like the aircon, you can hear it for a while, 4 seconds or 5 seconds. But if it's not moving, you cannot pay attention to that, because it's not changing. That's what the body should be in meditation. It should be comfortable enough that it starts fading away. If it's painful all the time, you cannot just let it fade away. So it becomes painful. It's like, kindly move it, make it comfortable again, allow it to fade away. And what happens? And then eventually it will just stop being there. And then you're just dealing with the mind. The breath starts appearing from there. Breath won't appear if the body is really painful. It just cannot. You're just like this mental suffering with that bodily suffering. You're attaching yourself. And then it's like you won't be able to let it go. So it is interesting observation, yes, and interesting how we meditate. I was just in Jakarta in Indonesia, and I was teaching about this kind of softness and all that, and don't worry about the breath. There's like, at the end, this lady said, yeah, well, it's nice, but you don't really teach meditation, do you? I was like, well, I don't know, I guess I don't. So it's like, I'm teaching kindness and softness and letting go, but they think the meditation, or the way she was taught, that it's like, you either observe the feelings, you could do labeling, or just like go back to the breath, go back to the breath, go back to the breath, go back to the breath. It's not go back to the breath, and that's the meditation. But it won't stay. It doesn't want to stay with you if you have bodily pains, or the mental pain is too harsh. It's just like it's too much noise in the mind. Yeah. Anything else? Yes. Oh, now the questions are coming. Look at the time. What did you ask before? Okay. So much took. No, it's okay. Yeah, no, it's good.
So how do you stop or reduce self from being attached to suffering?
How do you stop the attachment?
Yeah, because suffering is always there, right? So it's about self in the suffering. So how do I reduce or detach self
Yeah, well, the turning away happens slowly. That thing is like, sometimes I give a simile like this. If I come to your place and I said, here's a new set of clothes, you cannot take any of your own clothes. You put on these clothes and you come with me off your front door, and you have to walk with me away from your house, away from your whole family. Nobody can come with you. You cannot take anything with you. Nobody's coming with you. You cannot even cleanse back. You cannot even cleanse back. You just have to keep walking away. Can you do that? Will you happily do that? Nobody can do that. You're always you're gonna be crying. It's like, I have to leave everything behind. I can't even look behind. There's nothing following me. This is not the path. That's gradual path is that slowly we start turning away from that idea of self. You start seeing that this is where I exist. You start seeing those like, let's say we talked about the food, and let's go back to Singapore after all. Let's talk about food. You eat foods which people tell you are healthy for you. You believe in advertisement, right? You read these magazines. They're like, this is what I should be eating. You start turning away from that. Wisdom starts growing like, I eat this because I ate this and I feel good about this. It supported my body. I feel light. I don't have to think about food for a long time after eating this food. And you don't identify with so many things. That's how you start. The turning away happens by not identifying with sort of these kind of things where you start seeing the strong self somewhere. And you start seeing that strong self as suffering. And you start moving. You almost like round up the ball slowly. You have these kind of like really strong attachments first. And they become less and less. You're not so worried of your looks, that you're aging, what you should be eating, all these ideas which are bombarded by yourself for yourself protections. And then because of those strong things that the boulder has, these massive things, you start rounding them off and you become this soft person, which is just, the self is not so, it doesn't go out so much. You're just happy no matter what happens in life. And you go towards that. It's hard to see in the beginning, sure, it's hard to see that. But like in the way we started this Q&A, that he was saying that the depression is sort of like all of a sudden you just realize it's not so strong anymore, or it's almost disappeared even. That it's all of a sudden you just sort of like, you see that I was like, I used to be that person. I used to strongly identify something. And then all of a sudden you realize like you're outside of that. It's not me anymore. I'm not so attached to that. But how do you do it? It's really through the Eightfold Path, through developing kindness inside of you. It really starts from this kind of like, you start being, I like to teach it this way, be brave of watching who you are. Like, that's why like even with the guided meditation, it's nice to do guided meditation, but what you should be looking is that the voice inside of you. Be brave and look, see what's inside of you. And sometimes it makes you cry, but you just cry and then don't get attached to the crying. Cry, and when it's done, it's over and done with. Don't be sad about being sad. Don't get depressed about depression. When you have anxiety, it's just anxiety. It's not you. And it starts with this kind of softness and there's like embracing who you are. You need to see the suffering inside of you. That's where you start turning away. Where is suffering in your life? You have to see it. You have to experience it. It doesn't come from the books. It's in this body and in this mind. That's where the suffering lies. No matter what the books tells you, you experience it your way. And you have to start, learn it. So it's not more difficult than that. You just have to learn it for yourself. Yeah. And then you see it, and then you turn away. You can't help it. Because you see it as suffering. You're like, I suffer because of this. That's how the wisdom grows. More questions? Okay, I'll start answering quicker, because otherwise it's...
Yeah, last question.
Okay, let's do last. Okay, sure. If there's one more, okay, I'll do two...
Okay, two last questions.
Okay, you're going to have really short answers. Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ajahn, and thank you everyone for your time. As you were speaking, I realized that I don't just want to turn away, I want to turn towards. That's me. And I want to turn towards happiness, beauty, humor. And I realize I enjoy these things, and I enjoy the opportunity to be alive and to have been reborn to experience happiness, beauty, humor. Is that wrong? Is that an unhealthy attachment?
No. I guess there's little nuances there, but I mean, I could. The more, okay, again, I mean, I would be honest about yourself. That's what we're trying to say. That's like, look, once you start looking inside of yourself, and that's the thing. Once you start spending more and more time quietly by yourself instead of distracting yourself from the cradle to grave, you can run the rest of your life and you end up in that same place than everybody else, but you know wiser. So just look inside of and be honest. You enjoy life, yeah, that's right. But the enjoyment is we sort of developing deeper enjoyments. Again, if you go in the shower and you take a 15 minutes, it's nice. Half an hour starts to be too long, and 1 hour it's like, I don't want to shower anymore. If you eat the best food every day, like I said, well, like in the chefs in the best restaurants, you would see the best food all the time, but you hate it. It just becomes, it's food, it's work, not gratitude anymore. So you're developing this kind of different kind of happinesses, and then you enjoy your friend and your partner the more, because you know you're going to lose them. You appreciate them more, right? Because there is ending some point. So you take care of them instead of like I'm trying to like have this kind of certain kind of happiness. It's like so you start seeing happinesses in different ways, and those happinesses like, oh, it's so nice. I have good friends, and we're alive. I'm not dead yet. So it's like, it's great. It will come to an end. So might as well take care of each other now instead of making fights. So yeah, of course there's happinesses, but the happiness grows because of you see them differently. Yeah. Yeah, sure, welcome.
Hello, Ajahn. I'm just thinking, you don't turn away from suffering. I'm just thinking, you know the suffering, like for me, I know the suffering. And then like what the Buddha taught, the first noble truth, there is suffering. So when it's happening to me, I can think that this is normal. This is okay, that I'm experiencing that. And what makes me suffer more is what I feed on to that feeling at that moment. What my mind kind of like...
So it's almost like you're talking about the two arrows now?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. So when it's happening, when the suffering is happening, instead of turning away, I face it and say that what is happening to me right now,
yep, it helps.
Is in line with the first teaching,
yeah,
which is normal,
yeah,
which is okay. So I can accept it and kind of like slowly let it go.
So okay. So that's your practice. Okay, that's what you're doing.
That's what I thought, because I always hear Ajahn Brahm teaching about being happy to be here. Mm-hmm. Whatever here is at this moment. But it's a very difficult practice. I'm saying that because Ajahn was saying turning away from suffering. Should we really turn away from suffering? Or should we face and
Yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I think there's nuances. Okay, let me try to answer so we don't go too long. But thank you for the question, and it's a good question. There's something to that. It's like we are actually being brave and going towards that. We start seeing the suffering actually what it is, and so we are going towards that. It's not like and I did teach it. People try in the Sutta of the two arrows. Is actually Buddha is saying that what most people are doing, you're distracting yourself. You are actually. It's like, oh, I'm sick now, but I will be healthy, and you're already thinking about that. You instead of facing it, that this is suffering. So no, we're not teaching you that you're actually distracting yourself or moving away and somehow. No, you're really honest. Really, the path is try to be honest about it and say, this is where my suffering lies, and these are sufferings I have. Well, turning away happens automatically. You start seeing that is like, this is where suffering lies, and the turning, because of that, we're not going more towards more and more suffering. No, as a Buddhist, we're actually turning away. Where is the suffering lies? It's you. In those things, it's you what the suffering is, and you start turning away from that. The suffering is there. It's just you don't identify with it so much. That's where you're turning away. There's no way you can go more and more towards suffering. It's just you cannot. It doesn't happen that way. Once you see the suffering, you're always choosing not to suffer. You always naturally start moving away from that. It's just how it naturally works. So it's not like you push it away. It's just you see it suffering, and then you always start moving away from that. And the happiness that we are going towards are taking us away from this kind of sufferings of rebirth. So we're turning away from rebirth, basically. Yeah. It's quite difficult, and maybe a bit late for everybody here today. But okay, so tomorrow we're going to talk about anicca, impermanence, or unreliability.
Yes.
And suffering follows from that as well, because of anicca. Everything is suffering, but we'll go for that. And unfortunately, it went a bit long, so today, and it was nice to see you.